Hello, everyone, and welcome to Be Kind, Be Happy Sutra Reading Time. And for today's episode 20, we'll be reading the Sutra, which is on the demonstration of the inconceivable state of Buddhahood. This is one. This is a this sutra is one of the sutras within the treasury of the Mahayana Sutra collection, and so it's one teaching within profound Maharatnakutta Sutra, which is basically a treasury of all the most profound teachings. This one in particular teaches the teaching of emptiness and how within emptiness one can realize the inconceivable state of Buddhahood. It's relatively short compared to many of the sutras, so we can read through it maybe within this one video. But if there's a lot of explanation that I think should be given, then I will break it down into two parts. So just to explain the title, the reason why it's inconceivable is because this is not a state where someone can conceive. By that it means that Buddhahood is not a state where we can think of, or we can experience, or we can feel, or we can sense. It's beyond that. So I think the best way to realize that, or to think about it, is that the inconceivable state of Buddhahood is beyond senses. It's beyond thought and concepts. It's a state where we just know. So it has to be realized. Realized is different from thought of, or felt, or experienced. Experience is another word that you can use, because the realization is direct experience. It's also the realm of knowing. It's just knowing. You know without thinking. It bypasses thought and sensation. So let's get straight into it. This is a very, very profound sutra, so I'm very excited to read this. Thus have I heard. Once the Buddha was dwelling in the garden of Anathapindara in the Jeta Grove near Sravasti, accompanied by 1,000 monks, 10,000 bodhisattva mahasattvas, and many gods of the realm of desire and the realm of form. At that time, bodhisattva mahasattva Manjusri and the god Suguna were both present among the assembly. The world-honored one told Manjusri, "You should explain the profound state of Buddhahood for the celestial beings and the bodhisattvas of this assembly." Manjusri said to the Buddha, "So be it, world-honored one. If good men and good women wish to know the state of Buddhahood, they should know that it is not a state of the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, or the mind, nor is it the state of forms, sounds, sense, tastes, textures, or mental objects. World-honored one, the non-state is the state of Buddhahood. This being the case, what is the state of supreme enlightenment as attained by the Buddha?" The Buddha said, "It is the state of emptiness, because all views are equal. It is the state of signlessness, because all signs are equal. It is the state of wishlessness, because the three realms are equal. It is the state of non-action, because all actions are equal. It is the state of the unconditioned, because all conditioned things are equal." Manjusri asked, "World-honored one, what is the state of the unconditioned?" The Buddha said, "The absence of thought is the state of the unconditioned." Manjusri said, "World-honored one, if the states of the unconditioned and so forth are the state of the Buddhahood, and the state of the unconditioned is the absence of thought, then on what basis is the state of Buddhahood expressed? If there is no such basis, then there is nothing to be said. And since there is nothing to be said, nothing can be expressed. Therefore, world-honored one, the state of Buddhahood is inexpressible in words, So we're getting to the point where it's not expressible in words, it's not conceptual, it doesn't abide in the senses or in the sensual realms. So it's not that which can be experienced through the senses. That's where we have to have experience beyond senses. Through meditation, through practicing mindfulness, we are able to cultivate the state of just simply being aware. When we are aware, we are abiding in a state that is beyond the sensual realms, beyond the mental realm. We are detached from them, from the state of observing. And my understanding is that is the perspective in which we can know the knowing nature, the seeing nature, not with the eyes, but just the knowing nature. My understanding of this sutra is that the knowing nature is that which is inexpressible in words. It is not conceptualized, it is not sensed or thought. The Buddha said, Manjusri, where should the state of Buddhahood be sought? Manjusri answered, it should be sought in the defilements of sentient beings. Why? Because by nature the defilements of sentient beings are inapprehensible. Realization of this is beyond the comprehension of Sravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas. Therefore, it is called the state of Buddhahood. The Buddha asked Manjusri, does the state of Buddhahood increase or decrease? It neither increases nor decreases. So let's go back to when the Buddha asked, where should the state of Buddhahood be sought? Where do you seek enlightenment? Where do you seek liberation and transcendence? Manjusri, who, by the way, is the bodhisattva of wisdom, the symbol of wisdom, he explains that it should be sought in the defilements of sentient beings. So within the sentient beings' defilements being greed, anger, and ignorance. Why? Because by nature, the ultimate reality of defilements is that it is also inapprehensible. It is also empty. So this inapprehensibility of defilements is also the same inapprehensibility of Buddhahood. And so there is the equality of sentient beings and Buddhahood. So then, does the state of Buddhahood increase or decrease? No, it doesn't increase nor decrease. The Buddha asked, how can one comprehend the basic nature of the defilements of all sentient beings? Just as the state of Buddhahood neither increases nor decreases, so by their nature, the defilements also neither increase nor decrease. So when we talk about our greed, our anger, our jealousy, our attachment, any of these concepts that we experience and feel as reality. I do love my mother. I do feel angry. I do feel jealous. I do feel love. These feelings, or we can hear it's called defilement, we feel that it increases or decreases. I do feel more and more loving. I do feel more and more hateful. I do feel less and less greedy over time with cultivation. But here, the basic nature of the defilements is that it neither increases nor decreases. So this is the fundamental nature of defilements, which is also the fundamental nature of Buddhahood. They are both neither increasing nor decreasing because they are empty in nature. What is the basic nature of defilements? The basic nature of the defilements is the basic nature of the state of Buddhahood. World Honored One, if the nature of the defilements were different from the nature of the state of Buddhahood, then it could not be said that the Buddha abides in the equality of all things. It is because the nature of all defilements is the very nature of the state of Buddhahood that the Tathagata is said to abide in equality. The Buddha asked further, in what equality do you think the Tathagata abides? As I understand, the Tathagata abides in exactly the same equality in which those sentient beings who act with desire, hatred, or ignorance abide. So this is the same equality of the Buddha. The Tathagata means Buddha. The equality of the Buddha is the same as, is that the Buddha is the same as greed, anger, and ignorance, because the basic nature is that they are neither increasing nor decreasing, that they are empty. The Buddha asked, in what equality do the sentient beings who act with the three poisons abide? They abide in the equality of emptiness, signlessness, and wishlessness. The Buddha asked, Manjusri, in emptiness, how could there be desire, hatred, or ignorance? Manjusri answered, right in that which exists there is emptiness, wherein hatred, desire, and ignorance are also found. The Buddha asked further, in what existence is there emptiness? Emptiness is said to exist only in words and language. Because there is emptiness, there is desire, hatred, and ignorance. The Buddha has said, monks, non-arising, non-conditioning, non-action, and non-origination all exist. If these did not exist, then one could not speak of arising, conditioning, action, and origination. Therefore, monks, because there are non-arising, non-conditioning, non-action, and non-origination, one can speak of existence of arising, conditioning, action, and origination. Similarly, world honored one, if there were no emptiness, signlessness, or wishlessness, one could not speak of desire, hatred, or ignorance, or other ideas. So this is the non-duality of these concepts. When we talk about existing and emptiness, they are non-dual concepts in that they are two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. Non-dual means that they are not different. Here, the Buddha is asking, in what existence is there emptiness? Because Manjushri is saying that the emptiness lies within existence. But then the Buddha is asking, how can there be emptiness within existence? What does that mean? And so he's explaining the idea of non-duality, the idea that emptiness is only exists in words and language, just like existence is also only exists in words and languages. And they create each other because they are defined by each other. Emptiness is defined by absence of existence. Existence is defined by absence of emptiness. Hatred, here he's using the three defilements, desire, hatred, and ignorance, being defined against emptiness, signlessness, and wishlessness, whereas non-arising is defined against arising, non-conditioning is defined against conditioning. If that doesn't make sense, we can use something more mundane like happiness. Happiness is defined against moments of no suffering. When we are suffering, we define that against moments of no happiness. And so we can't have joy without suffering because they are defined by each other. If someone was to only feel joy forever, eternally, for all eternity, without suffering, that joy ceases to exist because joy only arises against suffering. That is what it means by non-duality. The Buddha said, Manjusri, if there is the case, then it must be, as you said, that one who abides in the defilements abides in emptiness. So here the Buddha is saying that if someone abides in defilements, they are also abiding in emptiness because the nature of defilement is empty. One, you can't have defilement if you're not defining it against emptiness because they create each other. They are non-dual. So if someone abides in defilements, which is what is defined by what a sentient being is, all sentient beings abide in greed, anger, and ignorance, which is what causes them to abide in samsara, birth and death and suffering. But here they're saying basically, if someone abides in suffering, they also abide in emptiness because they are non-dualistic concepts. So this is the equality of sentient beings with Buddhahood. Manjushri said, "World honored one, if a meditator seeks emptiness apart from the defilements, his search will be in vain. How could there be emptiness that differs from the defilements? If he contemplates the defilements as emptiness, he is said to be engaged in right practice." The Buddha asked, "Manjushri, do you detach yourself from defilements or abide in them?" So now, because Manjushri is saying that everyone believes that Buddhahood is the state of emptiness, and so they are seeking emptiness. But then Manjushri is saying that you cannot seek emptiness outside of defilements because that is impossible. And so that is to say, you cannot seek Buddhahood outside of your own greed, anger, and ignorance. And so if someone was to contemplate the defilements as emptiness, then that is to be engaged in right practice. So now the Buddha asks him further, if you're saying that defilement is emptiness and that is right contemplation, then do you detach yourself from defilements, or do you abide in defilements? So Manjushri said, "All defilements are equal in reality. I have realized that equality through right practice." So he has realized that equality through right practice, the equality that all defilements are equal in reality. "Therefore, I neither detach myself from the defilements nor abide in them. If a Shramana or Brahmin, which just means a monk or a cultivator, claims that he has overcome passions and sees the other beings as defiled, he has fallen into the two extreme views." What are the two? One is the extreme view of eternalism, maintaining that defilements exist. The other is the view of nihilism, maintaining that defilements do not exist. Word honored one, he who practices rightly sees no such thing as self or other, existence or non-existence. Why? Because he clearly comprehends all dharmas. To comprehend all dharma, according to this sutra, is to comprehend the non-duality of all phenomena, that nothing is separate, that they are creating themselves, that these concepts that we see, such as good and bad, right and wrong, are not different, they are non-dualistic. So here, if he's saying that if a Shramana or a Brahmin is claiming that he has overcome all passions and that he is pure from defilement, and then he sees other beings as not being pure from defilements, that they are defiled, then he has fallen into the two extreme views of eternalism and nihilism, because he sees that he is permanent, and that doesn't exist. Permanence does not exist. And then so he's seeing the permanence of defilements, and he also sees the nihilism, which is that his defilements no longer exists. So that is nihilism, which means that nothing exists within him, and that the defilements exist within the sentient beings. And so by abiding in one extreme view, you immediately abide in both, because one extreme view creates the other. You can't just have one extreme view. You can't just have bad without good. So one creates the two, and the two, if you are attached to the one, you are attached to both. And so someone that says that they have overcome all passions, overcome all defilements, he is attached to one side, being eternalism, which means that he immediately abides in both eternalism and nihilism. So now the Buddha said, "Manjushri, what should one rely upon for right practice?" "He who practices rightly relies upon nothing." The Buddha asked, "How does he not practice according to the path?" So the Manjushri is saying, the Buddha is asking, what should one rely upon for right practice? Because everyone wants to practice correctly, practice with right view. The right practice is just the Noble Eightfold Path, right view, right understanding. But then Manjushri says, he who practices rightly relies upon nothing, which is exactly what the Buddha says in many different sutras, such as that teaches emptiness, such as the Diamond Sutra. The Buddha says, a real bodhisattva abides his mind nowhere. This is a very similar inference to say the right practice is a practice. He who practices rightly relies upon nothing. So then the Buddha asks, does he not practice according to the path being the Noble Eightfold Path? If he practices in accordance to anything, his practice will be conditioned. A conditioned practice is not one of equality. Why? Because it is not exempt from arising, abiding, and perishing. So if we abide by anything that is conditioned, it would be within the arising, abiding, and perishing. Arising, passing away, arising and passing away. It's conditioned. Anything that is conditioned by nature is not reliable because it is always ever changing. How can you rely on something that's always changing? The Buddha asked Manjushri, are there any categories in the unconditioned? So he's asking, what then is not conditioned? What is unconditioned that you can rely on? So the Manjushri answered, Word Honored One, if there were categories in the unconditioned, then the unconditioned would be conditioned and would no longer be unconditioned. So here he's saying that if we are talking about something that's unconditioned to have categories, it means it's got characteristics. If it's got qualities and characteristics, it would no longer be unconditioned. That would mean that it's conditioned. The Buddha said, if the unconditioned can be realized by saints, then there is such a thing as the unconditioned. How can you say that there are no categories in it? So he's saying the saints, being the arhats and the bodhisattvas, they can realize unconditioned reality. Fundamental reality being unconditioned can be realized. So if that's the case, how can you say that there's no categories? So Manjushri says, things have no categories and the saints have transcended categories. That is why I say there are no categories. So categories means characteristics, means qualities. And so if things being dharma, being all phenomena, if all things fundamentally in its empty nature have no categories, this is the truth that the saints have realized, the truth transcending categories. And that is why it is from that perspective that Manjushri is saying that there are no categories. But within categories, there are categories. But from the ultimate perspective, detached from any extreme, there are no categories. If you go into the category of existence and form, within that there are, but beyond that there aren't. And saints have transcended form, transcended categories. The Buddha asked, Manjushri, would you not say you have attained sainthood? So now the Buddha is asking, have you attained enlightenment? Have you attained liberation? Have you attained anything that can be labeled or categorized as sainthood? Manjushri asked in turn. So now he's asking the Buddha, Word Honored One, suppose one asks a magically produced person, would you not say you have attained sainthood? What will be his reply? The Buddha answered Manjushri, one cannot speak of the attainment or non-attainment of a magically produced person. Manjushri asked, has the Buddha not said that all beings are like illusions? So this is the illusory nature of all things, because everything is conditioned, arising and passing away. Nothing is permanent. Everything's only temporary and transient. This is all just illusory. There is no stable, unchanging state behind all phenomena and all dharmas. And so this is why everything is like a magically produced person. This Manjushri, from his perspective, is saying, I am simply a magically produced person that is only abiding in this very moment, and in the next moment or in some moments later, I will cease to be in this form. And so if you were to ask a magically produced person, which is just an illusory being, like a puppet, a false, like an idea, if you're asking an idea, can this idea of a person attain enlightenment? The Buddha is saying, you cannot even speak of attainment or non-attainment if you're referring to something that doesn't even exist in the first place. So then Manjushri asks, hasn't the Buddha said that all things are like illusions? So the Buddha says, so I have. If all things are like illusions, why do you ask me whether or not I have attained sainthood? So within illusion, what is attainment? Within illusion, within concepts and ideas, how can there be ideas? How can there be speak of attainment? How can ideas and concepts attain anything? It's just ridiculous at this point. The Buddha asked, Manjushri, what equality in the three vehicles have you realized? He says, I have realized the equality of the state of Buddhahood. The three vehicles being the Arhat path, pratika Buddha path, and the bodhisattva path. Those are the three vehicles that ultimately lead to the one vehicle being the state of Buddhahood. The Buddha asked, have you attained the state of Buddhahood then? If the Word Honored One has attained it, then I have also attained it. Thereupon Venerable Subhuti asked Manjushri, has not the Tathagata attained the state of Buddhahood? So this is very interesting because Venerable Subhuti is the foremost in emptiness. So he clearly knows the answer. Most of the time when the Buddha is dialoguing with great bodhisattvas and arhats such as Subhuti and Manjushri, they are only speaking for the benefit of the assembly. In the Diamond Sutra, the Buddha was speaking about emptiness with Subhuti because Subhuti is foremost in emptiness. He clearly knows these answers. He's only asking for the benefit of the assembly. Asking right now, has the Tathagata not attained the state of Buddhahood? Manjushri asked in turn, now he's questioning Subhuti, have you attained anything in the state of Sravakahood? Subhuti answered, the liberation of a saint is neither an attainment nor a non-attainment. So it is. Likewise, the liberation of the Tathagata is neither a state nor a non-state. So it's nothing that can be conceived. This is why this sutra is labeled the inconceivable state, because there's nothing to be talked about. There's nothing at all that can be labeled. There's nothing within state of Buddhahood that has categories or characteristics that can be that you can use to describe the state of Buddhahood. So then Subhuti asked, Manjushri, are you not taking care of the novice bodhisattvas in teaching the Dharma this way? Because Manjushri is a bodhisattva. He's a great bodhisattva. The intention of a bodhisattva is to lead all sentient beings to Buddhahood. This is called the Bodhi mind, the Bodhi chitta. And the Bodhi mind is the pure initial intention of all bodhisattvas. So this is the only one vow that all bodhisattvas should aspire and inspire within to practice for all of eternity, that I must lead all sentient beings to Buddhahood, and until this vow is fulfilled, I will not realize Buddhahood for myself. And so now Subhuti is using this to question Manjushri, asking, as a great bodhisattva, are you not taking care of the novice bodhisattvas in teaching the Dharma to liberate them and to lead them to Buddhahood? Manjushri asked, Subhuti, what do you think? Suppose a physician, in taking care of his patients, does not give them acrid, sour, bitter, or astringent medicines. Is he helping them to recover or causing them to die? So he's saying that, so Subhuti answered, he's causing them to suffer and die instead of giving them peace and happiness. So Manjushri is saying that a doctor who does not give harsh advice if it is the correct advice, or bitter medicine if it is the right medicine, is not helping the patient. You have to give them what they need, even if it's difficult to swallow. Manjushri said, such is the case with a teacher of the Dharma. If, in taking care of others, he fears that they might be frightened, and so hides from them the profound meanings of the Dharma, and instead speaks of them in irrelevant words and fancy phrases, then he is causing sentient beings to suffer birth, old age, disease, and death, instead of giving them health, peace, bliss, and nirvana. So the teaching within the sutra is a teaching of emptiness, that sentient beings are magically produced puppets, are magically produced, I think the word here is magically produced people. And so if we are teaching the sutra, so Buddha is saying, aren't you leading all novice sentient beings by teaching the Dharma? He's saying, novice sentient beings don't even exist. Neither do I, neither does the Dharma, and this is the fundamental teaching. If I was to pretend that I am teaching novice sentient beings, novice bodhisattvas, and I am teaching the Dharma, that I am doing these things, I am only misleading them. The truth is, the bitter truth is, that this is all non-dual, empty dharmas that sentient beings have to detach from the great bodhisattva that is leading, detach from Manjushri, detach from the Buddha Dharma, and not have the mind abide anywhere, not even the bodhisattva path, which is supposed to be the ultimate path. So here, when this Dharma was explained, 500 monks were freed of attainment to any Dharma, were cleansed of defilements, and were liberated in mind. 8,000 devas left the taints of the mundane world far behind and attained the pure Dharma eye that sees through all Dharmas. 700 gods resolved to attain supreme enlightenment and vowed, in the future we shall attain an eloquence like that of Manjushri. So the vow to attain perfect supreme enlightenment is the ultimate vow of Buddhahood. It's the bodhicitta, the bodhi mind, the supreme vow. So that is incredible. Then Elder Subhuti asked Manjushri, do you not explain the Dharma of the Sravaka vehicle to the Sravakas? I follow the Dharmas of all vehicles. Subhuti asked, are you a Sravaka, a pratika Buddha, or a worthy one, a supremely enlightened one? He said, I am a Sravaka, but my understanding does not come through the speech of others. I am a pratika Buddha, but I do not abandon great compassion or fear anything. I am a world honored one. So he's saying that I am even the Buddha himself, a supreme enlightened one, but I still do not give up my original vows. So he has not detached from his original vows. He hasn't forsaken sentient beings. He hasn't. So this is the inconceivable state of Manjushri. Manjushri is saying that he accepts all the paths. He is a Sravaka, but he is and he's not. Same as Pratika Buddha. He is a Pratika Buddha, but he's not. He's not in the sense that he has the great compassion to liberate sentient beings, whereas a Pratika Buddha is just self-enlightenment. Sravaka hear the words of the Dharma and attains enlightenment that way, but he doesn't. But he's still on the same level as Sravakas, and he doesn't see himself as better than them. And same as the Buddha. The Buddhas have attained and fulfilled the ultimate vow in leading all sentient beings to Buddhahood. But he's saying that he hasn't given up his original vows yet, and he is still practicing to liberate sentient beings. But he is still a Buddha in the sense that he doesn't see any difference. He doesn't see any inequality between him and the Buddha. So then Subhuti asked, why are you a Sravaka? So now he's explaining, because I cause sentient beings to hear the Dharma they have not heard. Why are you a Pratika Buddha? Because I thoroughly comprehend the dependent origination of all Dharmas. Why are you a worthy one, a supreme enlightened one? Because I realize that all things are equal in the Dharma Dhatu, which is basically just everything within the Dharma world. Everything. He perceives the equality of that, and that makes him the Buddha. So Bodhi asked, Manjusri, in what stage do you really abide? I abide in every stage. So before he was asked, he was saying that you should not rely on anything, basically not abiding your mind anywhere. But now he's saying that he abides everywhere. So he doesn't attach to non-abidance. He's equally abiding and non-abiding at the same time. And that is liberation, that is being free. If someone is to just abide in emptiness and not able to abide in form, then they are not free. They are not free from form because they are still attached to emptiness. They still feel form. And as a result, they are attached to emptiness. So Buddhi asked, could it be that you also abide in the stage of ordinary people? Manjusri asked, I definitely abide in the stage of ordinary people. Manjusri asked, with what esoteric implication do you say so? I say so because all dharmas are equal by nature. So how can he say that he is not also an ordinary person if he believes that all dharmas are equal? By inference, he is a Buddha just as much as he is an ordinary being, just as much as he is a tree, he is a dog, he is a heavenly being, he is a ghost, because they are all fundamentally equal in nature in that they are all non-dual. They are all creating each other, and you cannot have one without the other. They are non-dual. They are codependent. They're defined by one another. Subhuti asked, if all dharmas are equal, where are such dharmas as the stages of Sravakas, pratika Buddhas, bodhisattvas, and Buddhas established? Manjusri answered, as an illustration, consider the empty space in the 10 directions. People speak of the eastern space, the southern space, the western space, the northern space, the 4 intermediate spaces, and the above space and below space, and so forth. Such distinctions are spoken of, although the empty space itself is devoid of distinctions. In like manner, virtuous one, the various stages are established in the ultimate emptiness of all things, although the emptiness itself is devoid of distinctions. So within space, we can give rise to characteristics like direction, north, south, east, west, but that is beyond, but that is in space, you can give it characteristics, but the nature of space itself is that it doesn't have these characteristics. It's space. Space is just space. So in the same way, emptiness in itself has no characteristics, but within emptiness, you can give rise to characteristics like the different stages. So somebody asked, have you entered the realization of sainthood and been forever separated from samsara? So he's asking, are you separated from samsara, and have you realized enlightenment of sainthood and then separated from samsara? So he says, I have entered it and emerged from it. So he has entered enlightenment and then he has returned back. Somebody asked, why did you emerge from it after you entered it? So why would anyone in the right mind, after attaining liberation, emerge out of liberation? So Manjusri answered, virtuous one, you should know that this is a manifestation of the wisdom and ingenuity of a bodhisattva. He truly enters the realization of sainthood and becomes separated from samsara. Then, as a method to save sentient beings, he emerges from the realization. Subhuti, suppose an expert archer plans to harm a bitter enemy, but mistaking his beloved son in the wilderness for the enemy, he shoots an arrow at him. The son shouts, I have done nothing wrong. Why do you wish to harm me? At once, the archer, who is swift-footed, dashed towards the son and catches the arrow before it does any harm. A bodhisattva is like this. In order to train and subdue Sravakas, the pratika Buddha, he attains nirvana. However, he emerges from it and does not fall into the stage of Sravakas and pratika Buddhas. This is why his stage is called the Buddha stage. So this is why if a Sravaka and pratika Buddha realizes nirvana and enters it, they are entering nirvana because they are fearing samsara. They are fearing birth and death and suffering. And so they enter nirvana, which is peaceful, blissful, and joyful. But If they are not able to escape, they are not able to emerge out of nirvana, then they are still attached to suffering and samsara, because they are abiding in one view, they are still attached to both. You wouldn't be attached to nirvana if you didn't fear suffering. Because you still fear suffering, you don't want to leave nirvana. And having the freedom to enter and emerge from nirvana and samsara is the Buddha stage. This is the state of Buddhahood. Manjushri asked, how can a bodhisattva attain this stage? Manjushri answered, if bodhisattvas dwell in all stages and yet dwell in nowhere, they can attain this stage. So to dwell everywhere and nowhere at the same time is to have the freedom of the bodhisattva. If they can discourse on all stages but do not abide in the lower stages, they can attain this Buddha stage. So they can talk about everything being the defilements or the different stages. The defilements being the 3 defilements, greed, anger, ignorance. The 10 realms being all the way from hell realm all the way up to the Buddha realm. They can discourse on all the stages but not abide in the lower stages, because they are able to abide in the higher stages. If you can discourse on all the stages but then you only abide in the lower realm, it doesn't, unless you're doing it intentionally and you are able to escape from the hell realm after you've served your point, then it's okay. But someone that is a bad person that can speak of all the wholesome dharmas but then just abides in the hell realm all the time and is attached to the hell realm would generally be considered as a hell being. For example, there are a lot of evil people in the world that talk about compassion and talk about wholesome dharmas and talk about generosity and Buddhism, but in their mind they are wicked, and so in their mind they are abiding in the lower realms. Mentally they are abiding in the lower realms, and so they can speak of anything, but they're still abiding in the lower realm. And so if someone can speak about all the wholesome dharmas and everything, discourse about everything, but not abide in the lower realm, then that is the state of the Buddhahood. If they practice with the purpose of ending the afflictions of all sentient beings, but realize there is no ending in the Dhamma Dhatu, if they abide in the unconditioned, yet perform conditioned actions, if they remain in samsara, but regard it as a garden, and do not seek nirvana before all vows are fulfilled, then they can attain this stage. So this is the ultimate stage of Buddhahood. This is the stage where they are clearly abiding in non-duality. They see the afflictions of sentient beings, but they realize that there is no ending in the Dhamma Dhatu, that they realize the affliction of defilements, but also emptiness of the Dhamma Dhatu at the same time. They can abide in the unconditioned, yet performed conditioned actions. They can remain in samsara, but then regard it as nirvana. This is the highest state, because you're abiding in both, and you've got the freedom to navigate between worlds without being attached to any of them. That is incredible. If they realize egolessness, yet bring sentient beings to maturity, they can attain this stage. So being egoless means to not perceive the self, but still have the desire to lead sentient beings to liberation. That is high level, because a normal person that doesn't see the ego will stop trying to attain anything within the ego and stop action. There's nothing to be attained, so then they don't even attain anything. But here, they're talking about someone that sees non-attainment as the ultimate attainment, but still doesn't side with non-activity, and they are still liberating and teaching and benefiting sentient beings, despite realizing that there is nothing to attain. That is the high level. If they achieve the Buddha wisdom, yet do not generate anger or hatred towards those who lack wisdom, they can attain this stage. If they practice by turning the Dharma wheel for those who seek the Dharma but make no distinctions among things, they can attain this stage. So they are only speaking the Dharma to explain and help people, but they know that fundamentally there is no distinctions within the Dharma. They are only explaining what needs to be explained for the benefit of sentient beings, but they don't attach to their own teachings. Furthermore, if sentient beings vanquish demons yet assume the appearance of the 4 demons, they can attain this stage. So this is to benefit the demons within the hell realms, or within the asura realm, or within the negative states. They can abide, they can assume the appearance of them to liberate them, to connect with them, to empathize with them, and to lead them. And so by leading them, they vanquish them. That is a high level. Most people would be fearful, like most saints would be fearful of the vicious realms, would be fearful of the negative realms, the suffering realms. But a true bodhisattva is able to abide in it, to assume the appearance of it out of compassion for the beings in that realm. Subhuti asked, Manjushri, such practices of a bodhisattva are very difficult for any worldly being to believe. Manjushri said, so it is, as you say. Bodhisattvas perform deeds in the mundane world, but transcend worldly dharmas. So bodhisattvas don't separate or remove from the mundane world of this world that we abide in, but they transcend the worldly dharmas, because inside they don't attach, but they also don't remove themselves from it. Subhuti said, Manjushri, please tell me how they transcend the mundane world. Manjushri said, the 5 aggregates constitute what we call the mundane world. Of these, the aggregate of form has the nature of accumulated foam. The aggregate of feeling has the nature of a bubble. The aggregate of conception has the nature of a mirage. The aggregate of impulse has the nature of the hollow plantain, and the aggregate of consciousness has the nature of an illusion. Thus, one should know that the essential nature of a mundane world is none other than that of foam, bubbles, mirages, plantains, and illusions. In it, there is neither aggregates nor the names of aggregates, neither sentient beings nor the name of sentient beings, neither the mundane world nor the supramundane world. Such a right understanding of the 5 aggregates is called the supreme understanding. If one attains this supreme understanding, then he is liberated, as he actually always has been. If he is so liberated, he is not attached to mundane things. If he is not attached to mundane things, he transcends the mundane world. The 5 aggregates gives the illusion of ego and self. The 5 aggregates being here, there are many terms for it, but here it's form, feeling, concept, impulse, which is action, which is volition, karma, and consciousness. These are the 5 aggregates. They are also known as form, feeling, sensation, volition, and consciousness. And so Manjushri, he is using the analogy that they are like mirage, bubbles, they are illusory, they are plantain, it's hollow like a banana leaf. You just keep peeling the banana leaf and inside there's no banana. It's like the leaf of a banana is like that, where the flower of a banana leaf, you peel all the way inside and there's nothing. Like an onion. And so if we perceive ourself and our reality like that, then we can not attach to anything, but still abide within it and navigate with it. Furthermore, Subhuti, the basic nature of the 5 aggregates is emptiness. If that nature is emptiness, there is neither I nor mine. If there is neither I nor mine, there is no duality. If there is no duality, there is neither grasping nor abandoning. If there is neither grasping nor abandoning, there is no attachment. Thus, free of attachment, one transcends the mundane world. So this is this is exactly the inconceivable state of Buddhahood, because we're talking about emptiness being so here there's 2 types of emptiness. One emptiness is the non-duality of form and emptiness. Here he's talking about another state of emptiness that is free from these non-dual concepts, where the non-dual concept of form and emptiness, the emptiness of that non-dual concept is the emptiness. Within the emptiness, there's no non-dual form. There's no I and you, me and you. There's no mine and your. There's no dharma within this form of emptiness. This form of emptiness is not the same as the non-dual form of emptiness, being existence and emptiness. This one is the emptiness of non-dual concepts. And so within that, there's nothing to be grasped or abandoned. There's no attachment, and because there's no attachment, one transcends the mundane world. Furthermore, Subhuti, the five aggregates belong to causes and conditions. If they belong to causes and conditions, they do not belong to oneself or to others. If they do not belong to oneself or to others, they have no owner. If they have no owner, there is no one who grasps them. If there is no grasping, there is no contention, and no contention is the practice of religious devotees. Just as a hand moving in empty space touches no objects and meets no obstacles, so the bodhisattva who practices the equality of emptiness transcends the mundane world. Just as the hand touches no objects when they are moving it in empty space, this is how a bodhisattva abides his mind and abides in the mundane world. Okay, I'm going to end it here because this is actually quite long, and I will continue in the next episode. Thanks, everyone. Hope you've enjoyed this teaching of the inconceivable state of Buddhahood, also known as real emptiness. See you later.